All right, so today we're going to talk about the mindset that is holding you back from learning how to code. I had this mindset before I learned to code, and I suspect a lot of people have it, and that is believing that being able to program is a gift that you either have or you don't have. This is a toxic mindset, I think, but it's hard to get away from. It is basically in the water. I know if you're like me growing up in school, there'd be all this talk about, oh, so-and-so is a math person. And you see that, and you see people like Zuckerberg or Brian Armstrong of Coinbase, and you just assume that, hey, those guys are really smart. They've been doing it since they've been 12. They probably took the toaster apart, and that's not me. And you see that and you think that you'll never be able to be an engineer, and that is not the case. So in order to combat this belief, we need to shift our mindset, and we also need to start doing a few things. So I'm going to talk about 4 strategies I have for combating this mistaken belief. So my first strategy for combating this doubt, this belief that this is a gift that people either have or don't, is remembering that everybody, literally everybody, starts in exactly the same place, and that is knowing nothing. Think about it. So Zuckerberg, for example, wasn't born knowing how to code. When he came out of the womb into this world, he knew nothing of programming. Now, he may have started young, but that doesn't change the fact that he knew nothing when he was born. No one is born with this knowledge. It is acquired through practice and learning skills. So I like to think about that whenever I sense imposter syndrome or doubt creeping in, just because, number one, it's true, but I also like to think about it because it reminds me that literally everything is learnable. As Ali Abdaal says, everything is figure outable. You just have to figure it out, and it is totally possible. Okay, the second strategy for getting past this mindset and finally learning how to code is to get inspired. So it can be really helpful, I think, to see that other people have learned to code and to see how they learned how to do it. And my favorite resource for absorbing these stories is called No CS Degree. So No CS Degree, you can probably guess from the title, is a collection of interviews of people who have learned to code without the traditional background, meaning a bachelor's or some kind of degree in computer science. There are stories from all different kinds of people on there. I found it really interesting, but there are people who have gone to boot camps and people who have self-taught and any other number of ways of learning to code. And so I find it inspiring, and I think that's a really important key for getting past this mindset, because it also shows you what's possible. So once you learn that these things are learnable, the next step is to see, I think, how other people have learned them. And I think that is an encouraging thing for anyone. My third step for combating this false belief is to start. So if you want to learn to code, I would say just go ahead and go for it. So once you've seen these stories on No CS Degree, you'll have a few different ideas of how people have taught themselves or learned to code. And I also have a ton of videos on this topic, so I'll link the playlist up here and you can feel free to check those out. But I've done a lot of talking on that over the years of this channel because there's a whole lot of different ways to go about it. So pick a couple of videos, figure out a couple resources. Spoiler alert, I always suggest Free Code Camp, but pick your resource and just get going. I say just go ahead and start because a lot of times the hardest step is the first one, and once you get some momentum behind you, you can see that you're learning and growing and getting skills and able to build stuff. But kind of the longer you stop and stare up at the metaphorical mountain, the more intimidating it's going to seem. So I think the best thing you can do is just go ahead and dive in. And my fourth strategy for combating this false belief that programming is a gift that people have or don't have is to learn how to learn. So I mentioned that Ali Abdaal quote that everything is figure outable, and I think that's true. But in order for you to be able to take advantage of that, you need to learn how to teach yourself things. You need to learn how to learn. I think this is particularly helpful advice for the technology field because technology is always changing, right? So if you stake your career on a particular technology, eventually you'll run into problems because it will become obsolete. And things are always changing. New technologies are always coming along. I know for myself, in my day-to-day work, there's always things that I'm having to learn for the first time. And so to the extent that you are comfortable teaching yourself things, you're going to go really far. And in relation to this false belief, I think the more that you're able to kind of build that momentum and start teaching yourself things, you eventually do begin to see that nothing is really a mystery, right? Especially things that are well-defined that a lot of people have learned before, like programming. You begin to see that these are all things that can be learned with enough effort, and I think that goes a long way towards combating that imposter syndrome, those false beliefs that this is a gift. Eventually, kind of the magic doesn't fade, not in a negative way, but kind of the veil begins to grow thin, for lack of a better term, and you begin to see that there's like really no magic here. There's no magic here, but I think learning to program is magical, so I hope you do it, and I hope you found this advice helpful. If you're still here, you'd probably like the rest of my channel, which focuses on software engineering and self-employment, so consider subscribing. Regardless, thanks so much for watching to the end. Remember, stay hungry, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.